On the next episode of the Violent Professional Podcast, I sit down with JR, one of the founding members of Aries Clothing and current Aries Gun Team team leader. We talk about how we met in 2013 and his take on leadership in both the military and outside in the civilian sector. If you guys like this episode, please leave a comment below after the episode is over.
This is the Violent Professional Podcast brought to you by AriesClothing.com.
So we were gonna get into about how, from your experience, how we met. What year? 2012.
Yeah,
Is that when you
No, it was 2013. So in 2012, 2013, I was deployed in Afghanistan, and my JTAC, JP, who you mentored as a ROMAD in his earlier years, I always did, CrossFit type workouts, functional fitness and stuff at our little gym at our
I think
college.
we're gonna have to pay them royalties for the fact you just said that.
Oh, dang it. You can bleep it out.
Yeah.
At our little junkie gym in our little cop in Afghanistan. And so he had told me that he knew someone who started a gym in Lacey that kind of had that same kind of, functional fitness style workouts and stuff like that. And I should check it when I got back from deployment. So I want to say a month or 2 months before deployment, we came back. I asked him about it and got info and looked you up online or something like that. Because when did the gym open?
It was January 2013.
Yeah. Because that was August 20, I think, 13. Or it came back July, I think. So yeah, I think by that time you had a website and everything up and stuff. And I can't remember if I emailed you or if I just dropped in one day or something like that. But I remember our first ever phone conversation was when I ordered some shorts from you, and they were super big. They were XL or something like that.
Oh, was that international racket time?
Yeah, it was during international racketeering. And so I remember I had to talk to the lady you had working up at the front, and she called you or whatever. And that's the first time I ever talked to you on the phone.
Oh, weird. Now we're podcasting.
Yeah, I still remember that.
Going camping together and
yeah.
that kind of stuff.
It took you a couple weeks to get me the right size shorts, but I've forgiven you. I still have those shorts, so.
I think we still have that in practice. We wait forever to get people their stuff. So
yeah, it's a good business practice.
Yeah.
Oh,
just keep them waiting and it's
you got issues with our stuff. It's going to take around 6 weeks to get a new pair of shorts in. So yeah, that's when I first heard about the gym, and I came in, and then I don't really remember when we first met or anything like that, but just started to work out there, and I know I was there for the Sean Carson Memorial workout.
I think because we had staff running the front desk, I think I showed up and you're like, "Hey, I'm the dude you were talking to."
Yeah, I think something like that.
Yeah.
And
oh, hey guys.
Yeah. Hey, I'm that really tidy guy that works out here. And then I think it just kind of blossomed. I mean, we just started to. I started to help out the soft prep course that you were running at the time. Those feels like forever ago.
Forever,
that wasn't that. That was only a couple years ago. You were running those courses, so yeah, I just started to help out with that, and then
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that I still get messaged about the soft prep stuff, people that know that we did it back.
Yeah, that was a weird thing. There's definitely a market for it because there's a PJ one that there's a company that runs it full time. I think it's Guardian Rescue or something like that. I've seen them before on Instagram, but there's a couple soft prep courses. There's definitely a market for it. It's just there's a lot of work that goes behind it, and
yeah, it's pretty intensive if you do it right. But I don't know how these other people are doing it. If they're just oh, here's a workout program and then have at it, or if they're doing
for most of the stuff
we were doing navigation and actual smoke sessions and whatever pool work, 11 weeks worth of stuff.
Yeah, I remember out of the couple, what would we do 3 classes?
We did 4, and one of them they all just fell apart because they couldn't deal with getting this smoked or yelled at.
Ben was the only dude that I know of that is still actually came through the soft prep course and is in is still in 2nd Ranger Battalion and stuff like that. I can't think of everyone else who pretty much. There's a couple guys who still joined, but they joined PJ and quit or got hurt.
Yeah, that's standard.
Controller.
And there was a couple of people that just quit before the course was over. They quit the course and then they told their recruiter to eat a dick and then just went on their way and just were civilians for the rest of the whatever.
Yeah, so we kind of saved the military some heartache in that aspect. But the military doesn't care because they would just put them in a different
Yeah.
job, still get something out of them anyways.
And then like a couple of them, they weren't even going into soft career fields. They just were going into the military. Like one of them was a cook, and I was like, cool, we'll do it, dude.
yeah,
You
come
want
on, come on down. We'll smoke you, teach you some land nav. Green beanie guy that sent his kid through or something like that. His mom was coming to our gym, or was that the military school kid?
There was this kid that came through that his parents, like he was a problem kid, so they like sent him to military academy. Probably the best thing for those kids is not like, actually like, I don't know how to handle that because I'm not there yet. If my son gets out of control or whatever, but went to the military academy, and then I think by doing that you kind of create some special sort of psychopath maybe. I don't know, because they yell at him and stuff like, and for some people it works. I know people like kids that say they went through it or dudes that went through it and whatever, and said it was life changing or whatever for how they were because they were used to be. But this kid was like, it was like overdrive when he showed up, and they were like, the parents like messaged me, was like, yeah, he really wants to do this because he feels like the structure of it will help him, and we really want him to go because he was kind of a problem. And I'm like, okay, tell me about him, and told me he went to military academy and he got there, and I was like, holy crap. And so like it was like day 2 of it, and he couldn't hang with like just bear crawls, which is like for some people with that don't work out that much or whatever, upper body, like anybody, you bear crawl somebody enough, they lose their mind. Yeah. And so that's kind of what happened. And he was going, I could tell he was getting crazy, and he was like, and he started like, you know how it is, like you see that stuff and people are like, I just can't do it, and they start like yelling at the people and they lose their mind, and it's like, holy crap, I might get in a fight right now with this kid that's like 18 years old that is trying to, damn, like, I think that was like the last time where I'm like, I'm not into this, where like I almost have to fight somebody to get him to calm down, and he like charged at me and then stopped, and I was like, whoa, bro, big mistake if you do that. It's like, you're out of here. So like, I had to kick him out of the course, and then whatever. Stupid.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, you don't know that stuff about business and whatever, the stuff you try, and like, even nowadays, it's like you don't anticipate these kind of things that are going to happen along the way, and then you find out in the middle of all of it, and it's either makes you a better company or business in general, or it makes you go, yep, I'm not even going to take the risk on this one.
Yeah. No, that was a good learning experience, though, the whole soft prep course, and got it. Like I said, we know it worked for at least one dude.
Yeah.
It was worth it just for him.
But good on the companies that do that. I mean, like, a little bit after us, but whatever. Everybody wants to watch us. It's cool. So see, I mess up there. I'm like, yeah. Jacob, turn your phone off, and yeah. So the gym, man, like that was a good, like it was a good run, and then eventually I just lost steam with it.
And I I've talked to you about it before, but I enjoy physical fitness. I enjoy working out, obviously, but instructing people and stuff like that and trying to motivate people is a little bit different in the military, because it's dudes' jobs and you can yell at them, and it's
you can't push that over to civilian life at all.
Yeah. So I mean, it's very difficult, instructing people sometimes, and it just definitely wasn't. I don't know. I mean, props on people who are personal trainers or into that kind of stuff, but that's definitely not something that I could do on a regular basis. I kind of appreciate a lot of the companies, like even how we have our own programming and stuff. I appreciate more of like that. It's way easier just to purchase something and someone who already has the discipline and self-motivation than like be at a gym and be like, all right, let's go, dude. You can do this. And that's a lot harder to replicate, especially among just normal people who that has nothing to do with their job. They're like regular office people or whatever. It's a lot harder to get people to buy into that kind of programming.
I think that's one of the major things that was like super frustrating for me. And it's not that I'm like, man, I understand the human condition, and that sometimes, especially people that haven't been through training to the extent that we have, like, or the military in general, that you're like, no, just block it out for a minute. Like, I know it sucks, but just keep going. And then they're like, no, I'm not going to block it out. This hurts. And it's like, okay, well, I can't do anything. I can't, like, and it makes you so angry, but eventually you're just like angry in the sense of like, this would never happen in the military. And it's like, well, we're not in the military right now. Like, we're out in the population. This is like normal ass people that can do this,
Yeah.
There's some great people. I know what I'm talking about, but there's some great people we've met over the years through the gym.
Oh yeah,
And
for
then some
sure.
really,
Little
like, big
lifelong
headaches.
friends that
Yeah.
we've created through the gym that were there through some the ups and downs of the gym and stuff. But definitely people that just were on and off or flaky or just it's like I said, you're looking for 24-hour fitness membership. You're looking at the wrong
Yeah.
type of gym.
And that's hard when I like know there's somebody starting a gym up. I'm like, ooh, good luck, man. Like the gym, because I like obviously we're shutting certain things down about the business so we can expand. So the gym is one of it, and we're keeping a small section of it for us. But the when I hear like even the gym that I'm going to right now, when I hear they're starting it and they have this humongous goal of members, I'm like, holy crap! Like get ready because you're in for a long haul, man. Like it doesn't matter the size. Like I was in a place where we had a ton of members, and then just like any gym, if you talk to any gym membership or member, gyms always like kind of crash at times. It's like the stock market; it goes up and down with your members.
Yeah,
You'll have
yeah.
one day where you have like you're on top of the world and everybody's you got all the revenue coming in, and all of a sudden it's like, boo! It's just like drops like somebody farted in the gym and everybody's running out.
There's a style of working out, and I won't mention their names so we don't have to bleep it out. But that's what I think is interesting about their business models. Obviously, I mean they charge ridiculous amounts of money, and they have to because I mean it's expensive to own a gym nowadays, right? It's expensive to have instructors and coaches and staff on hand and stuff.
And
like that.
I think to some respect, like if you're like looking to be driven, that's more effective than a lot of.
Oh, it
things,
is, yeah, because I mean that market is really huge on like what we talked about. People who they need that self motivation. Like, and I've been to WODs and I've been to that type of stuff where you can tell the atmosphere there is like people are clapping and encouraging people, and for some people that's
I
cool.
cannot fucking
I
stand
cannot
it. That's
stand
why
it
I've never.
either.
Like, I'm just like, and
and
I
I
think a
think-
lot of people that are even listening to us in the military in general are just like, I just want to fucking work out. Like,
Yeah,
shut
dude,
the fuck up.
I don't want to listen to people like cheer me on to work out. It's be no different than like during a ruck, being like, "Come on, you can do this." Like you just
I think
sound stupid.
The only
and-
time that happens is in a ruck or a run or anything where like dudes are suffering is at the end after they finish and then they go back and they're like, come on, man. Like,
yeah.
don't
But
be
it's
a
more.
bitch.
It's
Come on.
the military really resonates with like suffer in silence, like. And if you're a leader, I mean, you're leading by example, right? So
Yeah.
that's how I always just try to envision it. Like, well, if I'm leading this, then I'm just leading by example, and my dudes will follow and step it out or keep up or whatever. So I think some people really resonate with those styles of gyms, and some people really resonate with, just programming you can buy and you can do at your own gym or you can do in your garage gym or whatever. And for I think a lot of military dudes, that style of programming and that philosophy just resonates with a lot of military guys, like veterans.
Yeah, so I know you're huge on leadership. So like, and especially since you just brought it up because like I know you are super into the concept of leadership and all about it. So as we'll segue into that, like what's like, do you want to talk about like leadership in the military or life in general? Because you're at a different kind of work right now. And I don't know if we'll talk about it per se, but like
Yeah,
there's a huge lack of leadership in certain areas of the world.
Yeah, so it's weird. Like, obviously I was in the military and was a leader for a little bit of time and stuff like that. And the military's version of leadership, when I was in, I really never realized it or anything like that. Right in the military, you look at leaders above you and around you, and you look at stuff they do good, great, and bad, and you try to resonate with the great stuff and try to never do the bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
And if you fail at the great, at least try to do the good. And so a lot of my leadership when I was in the military was like, all right, I had some awesome squad leaders and team leaders early on in my career. And when I was in the reconnaissance platoon, that was like, these guys are amazing leaders. And they're not amazing leaders because they went to this awesome leadership school, right? They're not amazing leaders because they have their Ranger tab or, they survived this firefight or did this operation or anything like that, right? They're amazing leaders because, they led by example, they listened to their dudes, they always took care of their dudes, right? So the welfare of them, things like that. And that's all stuff that the military, I think, it's like OJT, like on the job training, right?
Yeah.
You don't really go to courses in the military that you're like, that's how you be a leader, because people always talk about, like, let's say Ranger School, right? Oh, it's a leadership school or it's a suck fest or anything like that. And there's a lot of people you talk to that have Ranger tabs that are like, yeah, it's just a suck fest. You grind through it, you get a tab, and you're done. And some people learn leadership stuff, right? And kudos for them for doing that. But most infantry dudes just get on the job training, right? Like I went to ALC, right, when I was a squad leader, advanced leaders course, when I came back from Afghanistan, and it was almost a joke. Like I had about 8 months left in the Army. I had to go to it because I had my E6, and it was just mandatory. The Army made me go to it. And it was a complete joke. They flew out a team here from Benning, and there were some civilian trainers and some military trainers, and a lot of the material that was covered was just so basic, and it was just there was nothing good in that class at all. And you can sit in a classroom, and I mean, infantry guys, I mean, most guys in combat arms type jobs anyways, I mean, you can sit in a classroom and after the PT test and some people do some introductions, you can tell who the dudes are that are pipe hitters or that mean business or great leaders, and you can tell who the dudes are who are like, oh, that dude's a 15-year E6 and just got promoted, or oh, that dude's, you know, he probably works in an S shop. I mean, you can tell that pretty easily. And so it was super disappointing when I was getting out of the military just in leadership, and I really never was really passionate about it or really thought that much about it. And so I worked at this well-known large box retailer, you know, and I was a medical rep there, so I provided medical services to people in the warehouse, just for some background. So I dealt a lot with, you know, upper management, you know, managers, operations people, safety team, stuff like that. And so, you know, I started to see more of like corporate leadership and what drives corporate leadership and stuff like that. And this is obviously a very large box realtor type people, and so
everyone uses it online.
Yeah, everyone uses them. And so
it's a river in South America.
So they have a very aggressive approach, not only, I wouldn't really say to leadership, but just into their management styles. Like that is where I got a taste of corporate leadership, and where I was like, oh, this is what they meant by, you know, cutthroat. And yeah, all those articles you read about that company and climbing the ladder and stabbing people in the back. I mean, that's largely true. Like I saw people, you know, trample on people trying to advance their own personal gains and career and beliefs. And it was frustrating for me because as a medical rep, you know, a lot of the working class there, the wage workers, I guess you could say, the hourly employees, you know, they're, you know, mid 30s, 40s. There's people in their 50s, some people in their 60s, right? I mean, they, you know, lost their retirements in the stock market crash, or, you know, got laid off from a job or what have you. And so you got these younger people coming out of college, getting into these leadership positions in charge of a much older workforce. And I saw a lot less care and empathy for those people than, because the younger guys are, you know, and girls are trying to, you know, promote their careers in this company, and they're almost doing it on the, you know, for lack of a better term, blood, sweat, and tears of the older workforce.
It's very reminiscent of how the military is.
That's
yep. Oh my god,
it's no different than when you got a young PL that comes from West Point or a college, right, that shows up, and I mean, they're trying to ride their coattails for 2 years in the platoon to get promoted, to get up to captain and stuff like that, or move into some battle position. So, you know, when I was there, it was very frustrating for me because I saw a lot of failed leadership, and a lot of it was just that realtor's part on not really educating their people. Because like I said, I mean, corporate leadership is a whole nother animal. And so leaving that, I moved into law enforcement, right? And so the military and law enforcement are very two separate entities, but a lot of the characteristics and leadership values are the same. And so I think I've had a good base knowledge of good, great, bad leadership in the military and in that online box realtor that everyone uses, and then going into law enforcement. So I had a good idea of kind of what leadership was, but I didn't really understand a lot of the, you know, the founding principles. Because it's very easy to get, like, let's say, you know, in the military, it's very easy to show up to a platoon and meet your team leader and be like, oh, this guy's you know, he's a jerk, and the whole platoon sergeant's kind of nice, and the PL's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, that's just like all standard stuff. But until you start seeing the bigger picture, which doesn't really happen until you not only grow up in rank and maturity, but just with time, it just takes time to see them in different environments and stuff like that. And so when I went to law enforcement, I had a good idea of what me personally I thought leadership was. And so I had read a few military leadership books when I was in the military. I read Leadership and Training for the Fight that Paul Howell wrote. He's a retired Delta Force guy, and I really resonated a lot with that book. I mean, it was really simple, right? It was black and white. It was perfect for a, you know, quote unquote knuckle dragger like myself. You know, he'd say, hey, this situation happened when I was in CAG. Here's the lessons learned from it. Here's how we prevented it. You know, here's the steps we took, type thing. And he also goes into some training stuff towards the end of the book. But that book just really opened my eyes as far as like, wow, there are people out there that are towards the end of their career or have retired from, you know, highly specialized units or successful careers in the military that have a lot of leadership lessons that are really worthwhile for the community, right? For especially combat arms guys or people in situations that, they're around deadly stuff or dangerous stuff all the time that the community needs to know to learn from, because these are lessons learned that, are blood, sweat, and tear lessons, like I talked about, that aren't going to be taught like at a leadership school, right? They're not going to be taught at, some dorky Army leadership course that they make people to go to. That's just, a check the box type thing, or even some of the, more law enforcement type leadership courses or things like that. It's very easy to sit in a classroom and go, what's like leadership 101, right? What's leadership 101? Open door policy, right? I mean, that goes for military, corporate, law enforcement. I mean, that just goes for everything. Work at UPS, they say they have an open door policy, right? And then it's always, if you're a leader, you always tell your dudes they're the most important thing, right? So, I mean, that's just leadership 101. But what really started to resonate with me is actually seeing that, right? So I can look back now on my career in the military and go, oh, wow, like that leader, like actually when he said that we, training us, we were his priority, like he actually meant that. Whereas, and some people, like I said, a lot of people just have those very simple 101 leadership stuff as like the core set to leadership, when there's a lot more that goes on into that. And so, kind of as I've been in law enforcement, I started to really read a lot of these old military dudes that have gotten out their leadership books, because they're great lesson learns leadership books, and they make them apply to not only law enforcement to corporate leadership, right? So one of the ones I'm currently reading right now is Leadership in the Shadows, and that's by Sergeant Major Kyle Lamb. So he's the guy that runs Viking Tactics, and he basically started to give public speaking stuff to companies about leadership stuff and stuff he had learned. And the companies basically were telling him, like, this is awesome stuff. You need to put this in a book, And so, again, that goes back to, like, that whole lesson learned thing. I think he talks about in his book kind of that aha light bulb moment of, wow, this is stuff that can help people, in the corporate business and law enforcement, and still that are in the military. This can help them become better leaders and learn from my mistakes or guys that I know that made mistakes. And so I'm almost done with his book, and that's a great book that I read. And then this past fall, one of the supervisors at my job was like, hey, you should check out this book called Extreme Ownership. And a lot of us have kind of been, getting the book, reading it, all that kind of stuff. So he actually bought my copy for me. And it's written by Jocko Willink, who also does a well-known podcast. And I mean, his book, very detailed and it's probably one of the best like leadership books. Like, I mean, people can be like, oh, he's a Navy SEAL, whatever. But I mean, like, dudes should be handed that almost at basic training. Like, it is like a very, very good book on military style leadership that can apply to law enforcement and to the corporate style world. Like, one of the biggest things that I took from that was like decentralized command, right? That's one of the things that I think leaders struggle with the most, right? So let's say the easiest way I can explain that, right, would be like you got your commander, right? So the commander goes, hey, like the company commander, hey, here's my mission intent, right? And here's what I want. Here's like the end state of this operation, what I want it to be. Here are 3 PLs, like here platoon leaders, lieutenants. Here's like my end state, and the 3 PLs, lieutenants, they get together and they're like, all right, how do we want to plan this? Get with the platoon sergeants, they plan their each individual pieces, right? I mean, it just keeps filtering down. The commander doesn't go, hey, here's how the entire operation is going to happen, right?
I've seen that happen as well, though.
Oh,
You
see it happen. You see it happen all the time, right? I've seen it happen numerous times. I've seen the company commander be like, "Hey, here's what every platoon's going to do. Here's like the task conditions and standards." And it shouldn't really be like that, right? Like the lieutenants are there to lead, the platoon sergeants are there to lead, so are the squad leaders, all that stuff. And so you got to give a more decentralized. You got to give a good mission statement, and you got to let people below you come up with how they're going to figure that out, right? Because as a commander, you're worried about the end state, right? You're worried about how you get there, but that's something you can look over through mission planning and all that stuff. So, let's say for the corporate world, it's no different than an operations manager at this box retailer that I worked at saying, hey, we need 5,000 units shipped, right? And you got guys who are picking certain items, people who are packing certain items, right? But the operations manager goes, hey, area manager, figure out who's better at picking and packing, right? Because we need more items picked than we need packed, right, for our in-state goal, right? Instead of the operations manager go, hey, area manager, I've already assigned the tasks for everybody. Just tell them what their tasks are, right? That kind of defeats the purpose of the area manager and him knowing his people, right? Because the operations manager could say, well, hey, this person's actually better at this, and the operations manager could go, well, screw you, area manager. I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah, and you see that kind of stuff happen all the time, military and corporate-wise, because I did, I've obviously been in both. So
yeah,
I've seen it from all different both of those sides, and it's super frustrating when there's no decentralized command in any of those aspects.
Oh yeah, and I've in law enforcement it's the same thing, right? Every law enforcement agency has a police chief or sheriff, right? And they go, hey, here's the mission statement, right? Protect the community, answer 911 calls, whatever, stop crime, crush it, right? And the commander then takes that and goes, hey, here's how I want to accomplish that mission. Lieutenants, hey, I want to accomplish that mission, or captains, or whatever the rank structure is. And a lot of times, I think that whole what we talked about at the beginning, right? The commander saying, "Hey, here's how everything's going to happen," right? That's something that I've seen like throughout my short time in law enforcement, short time in corporate, and my little bit of extended time in the military. I mean, that's just something that I think isn't taught enough is decentralized command. And Jocko talks about it really well. I mean, he would be, at some, like at a forward area, staging area in Ramadi, and he'd have platoons out in certain areas, and they'd be getting in firefights and stuff like that. And he wouldn't be stepping on the radio. He wouldn't be stepping on his dudes. He'd be waiting for them to request assets and resources. He'd be looking at the overall map, making sure guys weren't going to be any friendly fire type situations and stuff like that. And so he did decentralized command. I've seen.
Was that around 2006 time frame?
Yeah, it was back.
Yeah,
I was
in Ramadi during that time, and it seemed like the SEALs were just fucking crushing it.
Yeah.
Like every night they were going out and crushing dudes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, his task
seemed very, very effective. I mean, other than SEALs, all jokes aside, SEALs are very effective regardless because of their mission set and how they're trained and brought up. But like that particular time, they were crushing it.
Yeah, and I think for most people who were in that unit, obviously I wasn't, but for most people, it'd be fair to say that a lot of that probably stemmed from Jocko's leadership. I mean, he had complete accountability and complete decentralized command. Like he pushed stuff down to his dudes, and he let his, all the guys all the leadership on the strike forces like run with stuff and not step on them, not do anything. I mean, he let them do their jobs, and so I think that really encourages leaders to grow too within a unit. You know what I mean? I mean, that encourages people to develop and learn from their own mistakes, right? Because if you always got big brother, the commander, whoever watching over you all the time, then you're not learning from your mistakes. You're so scared to make mistakes. You know what I mean? Or you get in a tick and you're scared to request assets because last firefight you got into, he denied them or whatever. He's just stepping all over you. So his was a book that I probably read that maybe 5-6 months ago, and that has been one of the better books that I've ever read on leadership. And so for Christmas, man, the wife was like, "Oh, what do you want for Christmas?" And I was like, "Wow, here's like these five other military leadership books." And some of them I've read before, like Leadership and Training for the Fight. I've read it before, but I had given a copy to someone in the military, and so I got a new copy of it. I'm gonna read it again, bust out the old highlighter and highlight a bunch of stuff in it. But
how do the books that you're reading and the books you've read helped you develop your leadership habits between military transitioning to now law enforcement? And even working for a big retail box company.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is, and so obviously, I was a supervisor in the military at different levels, and not doing that anymore in law enforcement. I'm just a, regular dude. But I think the biggest thing for me that I've learned is that it's still important to be engaged, right? It's very easy if you're in the military, and I'll just relate it to the infantry because that's what I was in. It's very easy to be like a private or a specialist and just not care anymore. It's very easy to be like, I don't care what we do anymore. I don't care what the mission is. I'll just wait till someone tells me what to do and just grind along with it and come back, right? And it's very easy to do that in law enforcement also. It's very easy to just sit back and be like, yep, I'll let whatever happens, just roll with the punches. And not that, there's that balance of being too negative, but also, you have to be protective of yourself and the guys around you, right? So if you see bad leadership and you don't call it out, you're just at fault. A lot of people say, hey Rod, why'd you get out of the military? Like, I was moving up fast in the ranks, right? Had good NCOERs, which are, like your evaluation forms, could have been a lifer, right? But a lot of it for me was when I deployed, as I deployed more, I did 3 deployments. As I deployed more, I kind of realized like, holy smokes, man, like my life hinges on people above me and their idiotic decisions, right? So I can literally, my life I could be seriously injured or killed, and the lives of my guys, because there's a captain, there's a lieutenant, there's a platoon sergeant, or there's a dorky major sitting in a talk hundreds of miles away that won't give us CAS or RD or whatever, right? Yeah. Or that wants us to go down this route that we know is laced with IEDs, or where we know we're going to get in a fight. And so my life hinges on their leadership, right? And so that's a scary thought, you know. I
Yeah,
mean,
and it's not that you're not willing to accept those consequences being in the military, but it's like you're tired of seeing it over and over
Oh,
again, and you can't change it no matter how you many times you send up the anonymous forms or you tell your command
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
It never goes anywhere for the most part, and that's not like a dig at the military or whatever, because I'm proud that I serve and I know you are.
Yeah.
But it's a frustrating thing to continuously watch when you
Yeah.
get that one leader that shows up, like, because usually in the military they cycle out like every 2 years or whatever,
Yep.
which is a fucking weird concept
Yeah.
that they are in there. They create this awesome thing or horrible thing out of their leadership and then
peace out.
just go away. And then it's like, okay, everybody start over again from top to bottom.
Yeah, and I think that once you start seeing that, I mean, it's so hard because the military is such a large organization. Like, you're not gonna not have bad leaders, right? And there's nothing you can do, right? Because officers have career progression, even NCOs and stuff. And so people getting put in situations that you're like, okay, like, is that really relevant? You know, like, for instance, we did this air assault in Afghanistan. Our sergeant major was visiting us at our company cop, and so he just threw himself on the manifest for the bird, right? But part of getting let's back up for a sec. Even getting the manifest for the bird, like, I think we only had like 3 birds. It was like platoon, basically a platoon and a half, and then some company assets. But you know, it's an air assault in Afghanistan, and we're at a company cop, so everyone's trying to get their feet wet, right? So you got obviously the commander, the first sergeant come in, the company medics are coming. You got like random mortar dudes come in. You got like female SFATs come in, right? Which had nothing to do with the mission.
Stupid Air Force nerds that control
No,
airstrikes.
the JTAC. I love JP. Dude.
Yeah.
Like, shout out to JP if you're listening to this. Dude's awesome. He was tagging along with us, which was fine because we need the air assets. But then, like, Sergeant Major, like, we almost had to scrap a dude coming because Sergeant Major was coming. We already got Afghans coming with us, and so it's just like, that was one of those things. The leadership was like, Sergeant Major, is it really relevant for you to come with us? Like, no, we almost had to kick one of our dudes off the bird. Luckily, Sergeant Major just literally, he was on my Chinook, I can't remember if he was or not, but he basically just walked on the bird and sat down on the ground. Like, that Sergeant Major, like, he didn't sit in a seat or nothing. The door gunner guys didn't say nothing to him. Obviously, he's a Sergeant Major, but I remember after, we landed and after the initial stuff happened, he was walking around with one of the elements. I'm a staff sergeant. I'm an E6, right? So, it'd still be a little leery around Sergeant Major when he comes walking around. And I was supposed to be re-enlisting on the flight home, and so I had an American flag all folded up, shoved in my cargo pocket, right, of my pants, and like the little tip of it was sticking out, like the blue and white star part. Like, I mean, inch and a half, right? And Sergeant Major's like, "Hey, what is that?" And I was like, "Oh, hey, Sergeant Major, it's an American flag." And he's like, "Cover that thing up." And I'm like, "Oh."
Like, that matters.
Yeah, like, okay.
I
like,
hate that kind
it's
of
like,
stuff
it's the
right there.
American flag. Like, I'm wearing an American flag, IR flag on, and camouflage really isn't a thing because we just air assaulted into this village at 5 a.m., like, that's really irrelevant. And so,
Was it a thing about, because this is as stupid as it gets, it's about, like, that color can give away your position?
I don't know.
Because people will say that, like, we had the Solos back when they first came out and we were rolling around. It has the red heel.
The reds, yeah.
And people are like, they're going to see you if you have red heeled shoes
That's
on.
so
It's
stupid.
like, are you kidding me? We're loud as shit. We came in a helicopter. We're running around throwing grenades and, like, shooting and whatever. Like, people know where we're at. Oh, by the way, we're wearing ACUs, which are gray against a green backdrop. Go eat it.
Yeah. So, like, that's our major experience. I was like, okay, he had some good stuff about him, and I'll bring that up later. But that was one of those moments where I was like, man, dude, I really have, like, some weird leadership, and I saw it in my second deployment in Iraq. When you do end of tour awards, you're getting all these talk people, all these officers and majors that largely never left the wire, did anything, and they're getting Bronze Stars, and it was like degrading when you're a junior dude. You're like, what's that dude getting? Like, what's he getting that for? Like, oh, just for doing his job. You're like, that's retarded. In my other second major, like, sergeant major incident, it's pretty funny also, but that I kind of, and this happened about 5-6 months before I was getting out. It was right before I deployed. I think it was right before I deployed. But it was another sergeant major thing. Guys always have tons of sergeant major run-ins. But I was at the PX here, and I was walking down the aisle talking on the phone. I was in uniform. I was walking down the aisle talking on the phone with my wife because she was sick. So she's trying to, like, tell me which medicine to look for. And so I'm, like, walking up and down the aisle trying to find this dang medicine. And this sergeant major comes down the aisle, and he's like, "Hey." And I'm like, "Hey, what's up, sergeant major?" He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, trying to find some medicine. he's like, get off your phone. And I was like, okay. So I hung up my phone. And then he comes up to me. So I'm like, so I stand at parade rest, and he starts to like chew me out about walking and talking on my phone in uniform. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? That's what I'm thinking in my head, obviously. But I'm thinking like, here I am. I'm talking to my wife on the phone who's sick, trying to find medicine for her at the PX, right? And yeah, I'm walking up and down the aisle. But I'm walking up the aisle trying to find medicine, you know? Like,
so like that's the
kind of like,
I used to get in trouble for that kind of stuff all the time because I would tell that dude like it doesn't matter rank. It's like I'm on the phone like talking to my wife like about medicine, like this is important, and like I would get chewed out for it. Like, and I still have issues with that today. Like as you know, like I get in trouble for stuff I say, but it's like it's hard for me to like just when something like that is going on to fall back into like, you know, if I was in the military, fall back into the customs and courtesies or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
you got more important shit going on. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to fucking cut a dude down or like yell at him because he's on the phone because he's not, because you're not necessarily, you know, like following whatever the rules are of the Army.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted, you know, he got my name. He wanted to know what brigade I was in, what battalion. He's like, I know you're sergeant major. I'm gonna tell him. I'm like,
Totally respectful too. Like that's all you are. Like I know you as a person,
yeah,
and
I
like
know. I literally just stand there at parade rest, like, yeah, Roger, that's sergeant major. Like, I mean, it was one of, that was my brother who was, who was in the Air Force. He was there, and he was like coming around the aisle and was like, what the heck? And he's like, what the heck was that about? And I told him, and he's like, man, the Army's so dumb. And I'm like, yeah, dude. And
so one thing, like I love the Army, big fan of it. Like I served mostly with like on my deployments, all Army, and couldn't say anything. Like I won't say anything horrible about it, but they do a lot of things that are just like unnecessary blockades to stuff. Like this has nothing to do with leadership or anything, but I see like just something as simple as a construction project in front of the front entrance to a building, and it's like, they put this there and they're not even working. Like there's going to be months and months and months. It's like, why did you prep that blockade? Oh, you have to go in the back of the building, which is super inconvenient to go to because you have to drive around. It's like the Army does this shit all the time just to be inconvenient for everybody.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I noticed from my time at service that I hate about the Army.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I mean, there's plenty more, but those two right there were like really defining for me to like now when I look like, especially when I was transitioning out, was like, yeah, I mean, me personally, those moments were like just turnoffs for me. You know, they were kind of like, yeah, that's not the type of leader I want to be, and that's just, I mean, I can't believe that person thinks that's what leadership is. You know, because there are sergeant majors out there, right? I mean, that's all they're known for. They're just known for tearing dudes up and down. And,
yeah.
And I've seen that before. Even when I was stationed at my other unit at Bragg, man, one of our sergeant majors, he had just taken over our battalion, but man, I remember him walking up to us, like talking to us, hey, how things going? Switching out with the new unit, like, you guys need anything? Got all the equipment squared away, like super chill. Like, wasn't like, hey, your sleeves are rolled up one cuff in, or hey, you need a haircut, or I mean, was just super professional. And genuinely, I look back on it, and he's moved up a lot. I actually just saw that he is in charge of a much larger organization now in the Army, but he was a great sergeant major. I mean, he really, like, he's a guy you could tell when he said he cared about the dudes, he cared about it. I had to do a jump once for an air show in Arkansas, and it was on the weekend. And he came out and did it, right? First jumper out the door. And it was like, on a weekend, you think sergeant major has to come out and jump?
Yeah.
Nope. And he said he did when we did the manifest, the pre-brief, he said, like, hey, if you guys are going to be out here jumping on the weekend, like, and I expect soldiers to go do this, like, I'm going to be there with you, and I'm going to be the first dude out the door. And you're like, that's legit, like that. Like, that's what leadership is, that he's leading from the front, and he genuinely cared about us. Like, dude, he could have easily just been like, I'm a sergeant major, I'm going to stay home this weekend and barbecue with my family.
So
but he didn't do that.
So, like, I would call it leadership through loudness, because you'd have just people screaming, and they think that equates to, you have to respect me because I'm louder than you and you can't say shit to me. And you'd see it all the time when I was coming up as a brand new, like, TAC-P, like, coming in. And I'm trying to learn the basics of how to control what's the process. Like, shit, just pass a CAS attack form, like a CAS 9 line. Like, just learn that at a basic, and you'd, like, being a young airman, like, trying to learn this shit, and I'd go into a CAS simulator, and I'd go through the whole thing with, like, very minimum instruction on how to actually do this other than watching people over the shoulder, and I'd do my control, and then at the end I'd be like, how'd I do, boss? And they're like, you fucking suck, and, like, this is why, and blah, 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 and it never made sense to me. And so, like, because I was raised like that, I started to do it myself, because I'm like, that's how you do it. Like, I was trained, blah, blah, blah.
Yell at people.
I became a really, like, good JTAC, and then I became an instructor. And once I became an instructor, and then especially as an evaluator JTAC at the AFSOC unit I was at, like, I started to learn like way more effective. You attract more flies with honey, or what is the term? Like you attract more fucking flies with honey than shit, but that's not right. So
yeah, I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
Look that
that's
one
wrong.
up.
But like just taking a dude and like something simple I learned about like instruction or leadership in general is like guys are nervous, like especially in the JTAC thing, learning how to control, like super nervous. You take the biggest, baddest dude and throw him in a cast simulator, you can crush him easy. And what I saw is a lot of people that are fucking horrible leaders get off on that shit because they're like, oh, I feel great about crushing him. Like, you know, but what did that dude learn? Absolutely nothing. So he's trying to learn the basics about this immense monster thing called being a JTAC to be a good JTAC, and you're just yelling at him. So he's distracted, and all he's concentrated is on this loud, scary man that's yelling at me.
Standing in a booth.
Dude, so like what I learned as effective leadership and instruction wise is like you take a dude that is suffering in a specific area and you break down that situation. Like the dude may suck at passing a 9-line. He may suck at talking on a target. He may suck at just the overall thing, and you find out what's the worst thing and you go, let's work on that. We start and restart and you find that dude's, you know, issues that he has and just attack those until he's perfect at it. And then you continue. And then I realized after years of like being instructed to be a bad instructor by yelling, you actually talk to a person, be a human being, and be considerate and understanding of their situation, and then you help them progress or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's something I learned too. Just, I mean, again, when I was growing up in the ranks, I mean, there was a lot of yelling, and I did a lot of very dumb stuff as a young private, and right, you learn through suffering.
Yeah.
But I realized, especially when I became a squad leader and having a lot of dudes underneath me, I realized like, all right, you know, you got to transition roles, and I look back and I can think of a lot of good stuff I did as a squad leader. I can think of great stuff, and I can think of bad stuff. You know,
Yeah.
But one of the things I always tried to maintain was a high level of like training and tactical proficiency. You know, because that's one of the things that I think leaders don't do enough of, and that's one of the things that's really good to read about in Extreme Ownership was, you know, he's putting his dudes to the fire, you know, like even the train up before going to Ramadi and stuff like that. And then when Jocko became some type of commander of the training unit afterwards, I mean, he was putting his dude's feet to the fire. And I think that's more realistic than yelling at people, you know, yelling at people to not have them learn anything or just because it makes you feel better. I mean, that obviously, I mean, that statement right there just shows what kind of leader that person is. And that's something I think that is rampant in the military. And I think a lot of that is just, there's no, and I don't know about the Air Force, maybe not the military. I won't use that term so loosely, but it's rampant.
I can't speak for the Air Force.
Yeah.
I was kind of in the Army Air Corps.
Yeah. So it's rampant in the Army. I think a lot of that is just because the professional development is so weak, and there's just no guidance on any of that in the military. So, I mean, it's very heavy in the officer corps. But even then, it's like, I mean, are those guys really leaders? That, like you already mentioned, they're there for 2 years and they peace out.
Yeah.
So, you know, so a lot of that stuff I saw in the military, as I've gotten older and now being in law enforcement, I realize how it's just as important in law enforcement, right? Because I'm still in a career field where, hey, it's not just my life at risk, right? It's other guys that are on shift with me. It's the community members that I'm trying to protect, right? So a lot of the same values and characteristics that pertain to leadership in the military, I mean, they apply directly in law enforcement. I think in the military, I didn't wrap my head around it enough. You know, sometimes when you're so immersed in something, like, you know, the military just consumes you. You know how it is when you're training all the time and deployment life cycle and all that. So I didn't really think about it or think of ways like, hey, how can I, you know, become a better leader or learn more about leadership? And so now being in law enforcement and just being a follower per se, right, just a regular patrol dude, it's way easier for me to like read up on it and to think about stuff I do self-consciously, right? Because I think that's one of the big failures is people who aren't in leadership roles don't realize that a lot of those values and traits apply to you just being a good, let's say for law enforcement, because we're kind of talking about it, just applies to you just being a good patrol officer or a good dude in general or a good guy, the corporal or whatever job specifically you're doing. Like one of my, back to that same sergeant major that yelled at me about the flag, one of the sayings he had that I always hated it whenever he said it, but I always like, oh, okay, that actually like makes sense now that, you know, he said it after everything, but he always said you're only as good as your last operation. And so, you know, in layman's terms, I mean, you're only as good as like your last call you did in law enforcement. You're only as good as your last day you had at work.
Yeah.
Or, you know, dudes who say, oh, I'm an awesome dude, or I'm a good dude or a good leader because of this one time. Well, I mean, that doesn't apply. You know, you could be an awesome dude one day, and the next day you could be a total turd ball. So what are you doing today? Yeah. And so you know, and that really applied when we were in Afghanistan. You know, you could have an awesome mission, the next mission totally tick off the locals or whatever, you know. So that statement that he said, I think will stick with me for the rest of my life, which is weird because I also have a bad moment with him, right, from the whole flag incident. And I think that really kind of sums up, you know, what I think guys who aren't in leadership roles but underneath still need to realize, right? Like, you need to still put in the work and be a good dude every day and try to learn how to be a good leader and still portray those leadership aspects. Because, again, like, let's say, you know, you can't ever have like too many, you know, the saying, you know, you can't have too many chiefs, you got to have some Indians, right? And that's very true. So you have to, and Jocko talks about it a little bit in his book, but you have to look at situations that you can still help or portray some good leadership stuff. And part of that is just helping out whenever you can and leading from the front, right? So if you get tasked with something, you know, at work or whatever, I mean, you still have to, you know, lead from the front, step up and try to help out someone. Don't be that guy that's just sitting back and not doing anything. And that is something I think that we've all seen people ride the coattails of just the job, right? I'm sure you've seen JTACs that, yeah, they can call in strikes, they get checked off all the time, but they're not really stepping up and helping out with additional projects, or they're not really
I know a few.
Yeah,
I can name them, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I've seen the same thing in law enforcement and in the military. I've seen it in law enforcement too, where people just, I mean, they're not putting out the extra effort or the extra work. And you know, people have their own opinions about it. You know, people have tons of opinions about leadership and what constitutes a good person or a good dude. And those are just kind of like my little like pet peeves, I guess you could say. Or just because you're not a leader doesn't mean you shouldn't be thinking about those same leadership qualities and traits or trying to emulate them somehow. Because emulating good leadership traits is going to help you hopefully one day be a good leader. And also, if a situation ever arises, right? Because we all could be called upon, like let's say for law enforcement, you know, if your supervisor gets hurt or calls in sick or whatever, right? For any agency like that, even at like the corporate world, right? I mean, if your area manager goes down and someone has to fill in, I mean, that's your time to shine or your time to step up and still portray those good leadership qualities or values. And that's something that I think isn't talked about enough. I feel like too many people go, oh, if I'm not a leader, I don't need to really necessarily worry about it. And then they complain about the leadership, right? They go, oh, this leadership sucks because of this or whatever, right? Like, I mean, you have to, kind of how I talked about earlier, I mean, if you're in this type of career field, you have to be willing to call people out on bad and crappy leadership, and you also have to be willing to accept that sometimes, I mean, you're just stuck with it, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I think for me personally, I think if you don't call it out or you're not doing anything or talking about it with people, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, you know. And if something bad was to happen, I don't ever want to be that person that goes, oh, I saw that coming a mile away, right? I saw that. I knew that decision was gonna be bad for everybody. Because then you know you got to live with that guilt, or you got to be like, you know. And I was like that in the military. I mean, they'd be like, hey, let's go do this, and I'd be like, oh, that's dumb, right? I remember one time, and this is kind of the opposite, but I had hindsight on it now. I remember we went to go, like one of the platoons got blown up by an IED. We went out there with the rescue trucks, recovered them. It was super late at night. Totally demolished a striker, a double V hole. And so the next day, or 2 days later, we went back to that same AO, walked around the village. We were getting a bunch of chatter that they were going to shoot at us. They ended up never doing it. And there was like on top of this giant mountain hill thing, there was like a lookout perch, and we had some Kiowas. And so JP was there, right? So we were trying to get JP to get the Kiowas to test fire their weapons into this like stone bunker thing, and they wouldn't. They took pictures for us. And so I told my platoon sergeant, like, hey, let's go up. Like, I'll take my squad up there. We'll walk up there. We'll freaking dismantle that thing, you know, because it looked like exactly like a bunker. It looked like an Overwatch position.
Yeah.
They didn't see anybody in it, but that's exactly what it looked like. And so we had balled up he said he was a shepherd guy, but he was probably like a Taliban guy. He was watching the hills. The JP had the Kiowas fly over and drop smoke on him, and one of the other squads went out there and detained the dude, and A was beating him with a bamboo stick and all that good stuff that happens. Yeah. So I told my platoon sergeant, like, hey, we'll go up there, we'll walk, and he's like, man, it's gonna take, you know, hour and a half, hour 45, you know, and it was already getting late. It was getting 1600 at night, and then for us to walk back, you know, and what if we take contact? We're walking up there, all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of pissed because I'm like, let's go up there. Let's do work. We're out here. You know, we know we had a platoon hit by IEDs. We know there's bad dudes here. Like there's radio chatter. They're going to shoot at us. Like, let's hang out here. Like, let's freaking find these dudes and ball them up, you know? And he had the foresight to be like, hey, if we stay out here any longer, they're going to lay IEDs behind us. And when we're driving back tonight, we're going to get blown up. You know, it's going to be dark. We're not going to see them. We're going to lose air assets because it's just Kiowas and they're flying over the mountains to get to us from the other FOB where our air assets were at, and so there wasn't a quick turnaround time. It wasn't like they were back and gone in 5 minutes, right? They were gone for an hour or more. So I was super pissed about it, but in hindsight, especially looking back and thinking about it now, I was like, oh man, good thing we didn't stay out there, because the platoon that got hit the 2 nights prior, it had gotten hit because they had stayed out at a village super late and they were coming back and it was dark. And so they think that, those IEDs, because they came back on the same route, because there's just only so many routes, right? They came back on the same route, so they think they got placed after they had already driven. And so that was one of those things where I was like, like that was a good leadership decision by him, and having some foresight to think about that, right? And I think about that now and I go, oh yeah, like I didn't look at the bigger picture. So kind of how I talked about earlier, as I've matured and gotten a little bit older, I wouldn't say I'm, super mature, still have like the maturity level of like a 15-year-old. I can look back on situations like that and go, yeah, that was good leadership. Like that was a good decision, because if we would have stayed out there and climbed that and we would have driven back and one of our trucks would have got hit and one of our dudes got seriously injured or killed, I would have felt super guilty. I would have been like, that was not worth it. That wasn't worth it to, dismantle a Taliban lookout point, bunker they made out of rocks on top of this mountain that, it had overwatched the whole valley, all that stuff. But it's like,
you never know. Also, you can't really like think, you can't go back and be like, what if we did this or whatever.
Oh, that's true.
We were talking about that earlier.
The what if game. Yeah. And I mean, that's the tough thing. But I look back on that and go, okay, that was a good learning experience in a good moment of leadership. And that was like the best platoon sergeant I ever had in the military. Like he's still into this day. He's a first sergeant now. And hands down the best platoon sergeant I ever had. Like his leadership and his style, I mean, it was awesome.
So talk a lot about books, but what books are you reading, or have you read that are like your favorite, for like anybody that's listening that would want to pick up some books based on what you're talking about?
Oh, so like any military books, or just like leadership
just any
books?
Good leadership books that you have? Or
one of the best ones, and it's super hard to find, and it's kind of hard to get. I can't remember if I got
Book
mine
of Life.
Yeah, I can't remember if I got it off Amazon or not, but it's actually
that big box retailer, you mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The big box retailer. I actually got it. I can't remember where I got it from, but anyways, it's called The Devil's Guard. I don't remember who it's by. It's considered historical nonfiction. It's basically about a group of SS troopers, right? I won't use the term good SS troopers, right? But they weren't like the concentration camp guys. They were like actually.
So you're pushing Nazi propaganda right now?
No. They were actually like the assault troopers, right? So they were actually like regular infantry dudes, like just assault and stuff. But after the German war ended, right?
Is that the Blitzkrieg? Or is that a term for it?
Yeah,
Or is that a song?
Yeah. So, I mean, after the war ended, these guys weren't concentration camp SS dudes. So, I mean, they're
just army soldiers.
Yeah, they were just infantry dudes, right? Just, they're part of the SS shock troops. So, they went to Vietnam. So, and they worked with the French Foreign Legion. That's who they actually joined. And so, it's a great book about, there's great leadership and COIN, counterinsurgency stuff in that book. And that book, even though it's considered historical nonfiction, there's a lot of debate on if it's real or not, but it's called The Devil's Guard. It's an awesome book, mainly just centering around one guy and his experiences in the French Foreign Legion and how he basically rises up through the ranks, leading all these, ex-SS trooper guys and just, crushing the VC, essentially the Viet Cong, who were, trying to rebel against the French colonial forces. And so that's why the French Foreign Legion got sent there. But that's a great book that I'd say. And I mean, obviously some of the ones that I've already highlighted, like Extreme Ownership, Leadership in the Shadows, Leadership and Training for the Fight, and then The Mission, Me, Myself. That's by another CAG guy, former Delta guy, Pete Blaber, I think is his last name. And then I just picked up Team of Teams by General McChrystal, right? I think he wrote that about Afghanistan, but that's supposed to be another good leadership book. So those are just some of them that I'm like constantly thinking about or constantly reading. A lot of these books I need to reread and go back through with a highlighter, and I need to actually probably make like a Word document, because you read through books and you go, oh yeah, like Jocko's, right? Really the only things I remember are decentralized command, and then prioritize and execute, right? Those are like the two things I took from his book that I really remember off the top of my head. But I mean, he has so many good other stuff in there. I probably should go back through and like put it in a Word document. That way, it's easier to refresh instead of flipping through a 300-page book all the time.
Yeah, man. So that's awesome stuff. It's a different take than we've had in the previous episodes or episodes we're gonna have. But I think for sure we got to get you back on and like talk about like more leadership or just your time in the Army in general.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I'd definitely like to come back on and maybe tell some different stories about some leadership successes and failures I've seen and how maybe people can learn from them.
Sweet. All right, brother. Well, if you like this podcast, the episode, leave a comment below. Ask J-Rod to come back on. J-Rod, you're also on the Aries Gun Team, so you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So the Aries Gun Team, most of you guys hopefully follow us on Instagram. If not, just look us up, Aries Gun Team. Pretty simple. Right now, it's just me and one of the other guys is just on a podcast, Teddy, that are running it. Teddy's obviously covering a lot more of the military style of shooting, and I'm covering more of the law enforcement stuff. But get on there and like the page and, comment on any of the pictures, any of the stuff you guys like to see or have questions about, and hopefully we can get them answered for you guys.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. I won't see you at all, actually. You'll hear me talk and my guests.